Well, happy Monday, happy Labor Day, everybody. Alyssa Orange, Mike Irwin here with your Labor Day edition of Ask Mike. And as we always do, we're going to start with a COVID update. But, Mike, I think this is especially important right now with all of the students coming back to campus, how that's affecting things.
Yeah, that continues to be the big story now for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Last week we talked about the problem at Auburn, where they had to shut down practices for a few days because they had so many guys. And again, I want to emphasize that what generally happens is you get 4 or 5 people testing positive, but by the time you do contact tracing on the people they've been in contact with, sometimes you end up at 3 or 4 times that number actually quarantined. Well, this week it hit Tennessee, or last week, toward the end of last week. They had, I think, 6 or 7 players test positive, but they ended up with something like 40 of them being quarantined. And so they were due to have a scrimmage. That scrimmage got canceled. And now you've had people reacting, going crazy, saying, well, this is why you can't have a season. It's not going to work. Well, what we saw happen there is they canceled the scrimmage, but they kept working out. Here's the way this works. There are over 100 athletes on a football team. 85 of them are on scholarship, but you've got over 100. So even when you got 40 guys sitting out, you still have the equivalent of an NFL roster available to you. Now, it may not all be starters. And what we may see happen if this sort of thing continues and you have an outbreak within the season, you may see teams just have to go ahead and play who they've got. Because I think unless you've got a huge outbreak, you're not going to see games canceled like we saw in Major League Baseball. I think if they do have to cancel some games, if it's rare, I think what would happen is they would move that back to past the end of the season. You might see a game or 2 being played in mid-December, even late December, to finish things off. I think the SEC is going to do everything they can to play this season and just deal with whatever comes up. But this problem happened with Tennessee, but they canceled the scrimmage, but they kept working out. And that's sort of the spirit of this thing. And again, you're going to get people saying, oh, it's dangerous. They're playing reckless with these guys. No, they're not. If you test positive, you're quarantined. When you come out of quarantine, you get a heart scan. They're not putting people back on the field that if their heart scan showed positive heart inflammation, they're not saying, okay, it's all right for you to go back out and work out. They're saying, okay, you have to sit out until your heart scan shows that you're normal again. So they're being very careful with this stuff. But what they're doing is being creative. They're saying, we're not just going to freak out and go, oh, we had all these cases, I guess we have to stop. Coaches are making these decisions. So head coach at Tennessee says, okay, we don't have enough guys for a scrimmage. We're not going to scrimmage, but we're going to continue to work out. Gus Malzahn at Auburn last week shuts down practices for a few days. Then he starts back up again. Now, this thing with Tennessee, it's happened at a point in which they still have about 2.5 weeks left before the season opener. Quarantine is 2 weeks, so they could still get guys back in the few days before of game week. Those days leading up to game week, they could get back in time for that, and they'll just have to make do. What I do think is absolutely entirely possible is you're going to see coronavirus affect the outcome of games. In other words, one team is basically healthy. The other team's got some key players quarantined. And let's say it's Alabama and, I don't know, let's just pick somebody. Let's say it's Alabama and Ole Miss. And Alabama might normally beat Ole Miss. But if Ole Miss is completely healthy and Alabama's got a bunch of players on quarantine and they're key players, Ole Miss might win that game simply because they handled COVID better than Alabama did. So this is a weird season in which it's not just how well prepared you are for a game or how well you've recruited, it's how well your coaches deal with coronavirus.
Yeah. All right, let's get into questions now. Our first question comes from Parallax Pig, who says, if only a couple schools go to virtual learning in the SEC, do you think presidents would shut down the whole season for everyone?
No, because what we've already seen is these schools are committed to playing. This was a question that was on a lot of people saying 2 and 3 weeks ago, well, if you have to go to online, that means you can't have football. Actually, Hunter Yurchek in a podcast that's I guess it's out there right now. You can go find it. How do we find that?
It's the Hog Pod, so you can go on anywhere you get your podcast, search the Hog Pod, and you'd find all their episodes.
Okay, I just listened to it. He actually revealed that about 75% of Arkansas's players are taking online.
And that's student athletes, not just the football team.
Not the 75% of the players, 75% of the classes are online. what's happened is some of those players have classes they can't do online, so they're going ahead and doing them conventionally. And as he put it, we didn't tell any student, you have to go online. We encouraged it. And so when possible, they've tried to get online classes. And this is a way, once again, to keep them from having to go on campus and have a lot of contact with the students. And we've seen there have been outbreaks at all of these colleges. The numbers in Arkansas the last time, and I don't know if this was Sunday or Saturday, but they shot up over 1,000 cases, and it was a record number. That was almost certainly as a result of testing that's being done, because they did a record number of testing too, because on these campuses they're testing a fool out of everybody. They're trying to find out who has it and who doesn't. So they test a lot of people, and then that shows up as positive tests. So you go over 1,000 positive tests, where a few days earlier had been down as low as 300. This is the result of students going back to class at universities. So you're having that impact, but it hasn't so far had the equivalent impact on football teams, because again, a lot of these schools, you're going to online classes, and you've gotten used to kind of being in this bubble anyway through the summer. So I'm still pretty confident. I'm not saying they won't have 6 cases, 8 cases, and result in 25 or 30 guys. It could move around from team to team, but right now what we've seen is teams adjusting to that.
Yeah. All right, our next question, Blood Red Hog wants to know, with news that Jamie Newman is opting out at Georgia, does this open the door a crack for a shocking upset? Are we going to see the unthinkable week 1?
Okay. JT Daniels is their transfer quarterback from USC. He's a passing quarterback. He's not a runner. He's been working out. Now, he's a lot like Felipe Franks in that Franks got hurt like maybe the 3rd game of the season last year. Daniels got hurt in the season opener, tore his knee up. Knee injury, you should be healed by now. That's a full year. Well, what he's been doing is he's been working out, but they don't let quarterbacks get hit. Arkansas's quarterbacks aren't being hit right now, even in scrimmages. So it's one thing to say, okay, I'm a doctor, I'm your doctor, I've looked at your knee. Yes, you can go out there as long as somebody's not going to hit you. So we clear you to practice. We have not yet cleared you to play in a game, and that's where Georgia is right now. They don't know for sure if he's going to be available. Now, Kirby Smart said after Friday's scrimmage in a press conference he thinks he will be available. But they did something interesting, and we'll talk about it a little bit later as a result of another question we got. But he wasn't real happy with the way that scrimmage went. So we'll see how this works out. I guess the way I could answer that is by saying if Daniels is not available, it definitely could help Arkansas, but it may help them anyway based on some things that have happened lately. So we'll see how that develops.
All right, our next question, Delta Boy says, I love the new uniforms that were shown on Twitter by Boyd. What are your thoughts?
Okay, I think we've got some video. There's the uniform. Now that's the red, and now that's the white road uniform. That's new this year. They wore the red ones last year. These are the so-called DMAC uniforms. They were worn when DMAC was here, and they're characterized by that big, bold block letter Arkansas across the front that you see right there. But you also have these pants that have these double red stripes that are like uniforms used to be in the 70s and 80s that kind of went away. I'm old school. I love those stripes, and they now are back. The fans like the uniforms. I think they like them because of the DMAC thing. All you have to do is say DMAC and Razorback fans are tuned in. I think they associate those uniforms with success, so that helps. The other thing is with the white uniform that they've unveiled for this year, that would be your road uniform. Interesting to note that it's with the red helmet, not the white helmet that is so controversial. So I think fans will like that too. Now, I have to admit, I like the white helmet. And I like it because when you stick that red logo on a white helmet, it pops the logo. If you watch on television, when you put a red logo on a red helmet, it becomes blurry. You're not sure what it is. It kind of looks like a blob. But I've watched games with that when they wear those white helmets, and that you know exactly what that logo is. The other thing I would say, if you want to make me happy, and nobody does, so they'll never do this, but what I would like to see is the white helmet with a slobber hog on it.
Ooh.
That would be awesome. Maybe you wear that for a special game.
There you go.
Other team comes out, what's that thing? They freak out. I don't know.
You know what would make me happy?
What?
Anthracite. I'm so controversial.
You like anthracite.
Nobody I agree. I am such a minority when it comes to those anthracite uniforms. I just love that.
I want the slobber
alternate
hog.
uniforms.
Slobber hog.
What about a slobber hog on a anthracite jersey?
I'd take it if it was a slobber hog.
All right, here we go. Whippersnapper wants to know, now that Coach Neighbors has added Kelsey Plum to the staff, what are your thoughts? This could be a question for Alyssa as well. Are you passing the reins to me?
Yes, I will hand it off to you because you are our Lady Razorback expert.
Sure. So exciting news last week when Mike Neighbors announced that Kelsey Plum was added as a GA. And if you don't know who she is, she played for Mike Neighbors for 4 years at Washington and was the #1 overall draft pick in 2017. Fun fact, Washington had the #1 WNBA and the #1 NBA overall draft pick that year, which is pretty crazy to talk about. So anyways, Kelsey Plum, she also plays for the Las Vegas Aces. She's nursing a Achilles injury right now, and so because she's not physically playing, Mike Neighbors reached out like he says he does every year. Kelsey's always said, no, I'm too busy. No, I don't want to coach. That's not my thing. No. But she felt like right now she's got enough time in her schedule to go back and get her master's. So she's decided to enroll in Arkansas, get her master's, be a part of this team, be here when she can to help be a grad assistant, but also will continue to play for the Aces when she's healthy again. She was also on Team USA, so she might be doing that as well. So Homegirl's got her hands in all different kinds of things. But you know, it's funny, we had another person who covers Arkansas media jokingly say, we have never had a press conference to introduce a grad assistant. Like, this is a very big deal. And Mike Neighbors said that a lot of other coaches, other players were texting him when the news came out, like, why didn't I think of this? And, oh, I want to be able to do that too. So it'll be interesting now if some WNBA stars maybe that are in the SEC, for example, you know, Kennedy Carter, who played for Texas A&M, or, you know, Asia Wilson, who was at South Carolina, if they kind of be grad assistants while they're still playing.
Might start a new trend. I mean, the obvious thing here is that she's not that much older than the girls that she's going to be coaching. And they're going to look up to her. Why? Because she is what they want to be.
Exactly.
So they're going to want to talk to her. They're going to listen to her. And there are going to be times when a coach feels like he can't reach a certain athlete, she's the perfect person to go talk to them.
Absolutely.
So I think it'll be a big help.
Well, think about in recruiting, too. She cannot initiate conversations with recruits, but if you're someone, again, who has inspirations to play in the WNBA, and you know Arkansas has literally a person with the WNBA ties on their bench, or at least has access to her, because she can't be at everything.
Right.
That's a really nice recruiting tool.
Sure.
All right. Hashtag hammer down. He has got to find something new. Has said, I've heard considerable praise for most of the grad transfers. Franks, Kelly, and Jacobs have all gotten quite a bit of press. I haven't heard much talk about Draper. Knowing how badly we needed linebacker help, do you think he starts or is at least in the 2 deep?
Okay, Levi Draper is this linebacker transfer from Oklahoma. He was a 4-star out of high school, and then he just didn't develop for whatever reason at Oklahoma, hardly played at all. I think the feeling was, okay, you get him in a new situation, give him a second chance, he'll be a lot better. He's been hurt, so that's one reason you haven't heard a lot about him. He did get into this last scrimmage, the second scrimmage, and Sam Pittman complimented him, said he was doing a lot better. Then he went on to explain what the issue he thinks is with Draper, which is, okay, you've come in, you're dealing with a new defense. It's Barry Odom's defense, it's multiple fronts. Affects linebackers because those guys are changing around, and so in one front or as opposed to another front, it may affect your keys, what you're doing back there at linebacker. So there's a lot to process. Okay, apparently he's been processing while the play is in progress. And Sam Pittman said, I finally had to go to him and say, hey, forget all the technical stuff. When the ball is snapped, go find the ball carrier and tackle him. And so he said, that's what I tried to do, was emphasize that your main job is to make a tackle. You can deal with that other stuff when we're in meetings or whatever, but don't be sitting there letting the gears turn in your head when the ball's about to be snapped. You just got to go find the guy and tackle him. And he said he's been doing that, and he's been looking better. They need depth at linebacker, and that linebacker is a key position, because that's where all the explosive plays came from last year, when those linebackers were out of position. Somebody got through the D-line, and then boom, they were gone.
Absolutely. All right, Felipe Franks is an intriguing figure. After suffering a harsh season-ending injury last year, he chose to come here after that terrible season we had. What do you know about him, how Pittman and Briles convinced him to come to Fayetteville? Also, who else courted him?
Okay, I think the only other school he seriously considered was Kansas. And that's because he had a prior relationship with Les Miles when Les Miles was at LSU. And I think he almost went to LSU, but in the end, Franks, who's from Florida, decided to stay close to home.
Yeah.
Okay, so he goes back and I think he visited there, but ultimately he decided on Arkansas, I think, to a large degree because of Kendall Briles and the reputation he has as an offensive coordinator. Now, he hasn't said this, but when Franks was kind of sitting out last year after he got injured with not a lot to do, I mean, Briles is sitting there at Florida State. He can see what he's doing. Now, they didn't necessarily have a successful year. Most people.
They went to a bowl game.
But they didn't just tear it up.
No, they
didn't just tear it up. And I think he was watching that and probably thought, okay,
yeah,
I've heard about this guy.
Sure. I would also like to point out also, when Willie Taggart was fired at Florida State and Odell Haggins took over, it was those final games that Kendall Briles was given complete reign of the offense. And so better. That game at Florida was all Kendall Briles. And so I think that was.
And that may have had a big impact on him.
Yeah.
What we do know is that he said that he wanted to go to a school where he could help rebuild a program as opposed to going somewhere where they've already had success and all you're doing is kind of maintaining the success. He said that it's a lot more fun when fans are getting excited because they haven't had success and you go in and make something happen rather than to play in front of fans who expect it and then kind of get mad if something goes wrong. So
yeah.
Those are basically his reasons that he gave for coming here.
Hog fans should be happy he's here.
Absolutely.
By the way, East Tennessee Hawk says Sam Pittman has not been a head coach on this level before. How has he prepared himself to handle in-game decisions such as when to use critical timeouts, when to go for it on fourth down, etc.? He seems to be doing things right. Can he make crucial calls?
Okay, he's been an assistant coach at the major college level for a lot of years. Now, it's obvious what happens here. When a game is over and you're talking about a game, even if it's in the off season, you're talking to head coaches and, you know, you did this in this situation. Can you explain why you did it? And you're studying what they do and trying to figure out in your own mind, if I ever become a head coach, what will I do? He's also spends a lot of time, and we did a story on this several months ago, spends a lot of time out there with Barry Odom, who's the defensive coordinator at Arkansas, who was a previous head coach at Missouri. So here's your head coach on your staff, and they do a lot of walking because Sam Pittman wants to watch his weight, and they do a lot of walking and do a lot of talking about these kinds of decisions. Odom said he asked him all the time, you know, he described certain situations. Okay, you did this happened, why did you do that? And he said, he never says much when you tell him what you did. He doesn't say that's dumb or I agree with that. You can tell he's just absorbing it, and then he will decide on his own how he would react to that himself. But the bottom line is, what will he do? I don't think even he knows.
Yeah,
you have to get in that situation.
And he said in some of our press conferences that we've had with him that he's getting ready and preparing himself right now in practice. When they do scrimmages, when they're doing these 2-minute drills, he's out there at practice thinking, okay, would I call a timeout here? Would I do this? Would I sub to back them up? He's thinking in his head at practice to practice for game situations.
So you can prepare for this all you want, but the bottom line is you're going to actually have to do it, and you're not going to know how you're going to do it till you do it.
Right.
And then from that point on, you know what it becomes? Trial and error.
Exactly.
You do something, uh-oh, that was a mistake, so you learn from it. Or you do something right, man, that was great.
Look.
So he'll get better at it, whatever it is.
Nick Saban has been a head coach for how long now, and he sometimes makes the wrong decision in those situations. Just ask.
And then he cusses a lot.
Just
when it
ask
happens.
the kick six guys.
You ever watch him on TV? I was watching him in what game was it? It might have been the Georgia game. And he's just going nuts. He's just cussing. You can tell he is because some ref called something, and then he was mad at Tua about something, and they had to kick a field goal instead of going for, you know, it was a short and it was like a third and short, and they could have made it, but then there was a penalty and somebody screwed up, and then he's all mad and he's just cussing.
It's going to be really interesting to see how, because each coach does it differently, how Sam Pittman will control his emotions on the sidelines.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Is he going to be the the real angry, yelling, screaming guy, or is he going to be more like, hopefully he won't be the stone-faced Chad Morris where you just sit there and go, I don't know what happened, but we'll move forward from here.
Let's all hope not. Anybody asks, do you think that the word signage the SEC is allowing teams to put on the football field this year will have the same negative effects that the NBA, Major League Baseball, etc. is experienced? Do you feel politics should be kept out of collegiate sports?
You know, I like to avoid it myself personally. I don't like to combine politics with sports, especially on Twitter. If I've got something going on Twitter and they're discussing Razorback sports and some guy pops up with some political comment, I will a lot of times either delete it, or if the guy keeps doing it, I'll block him, because I don't want that on my Twitter page. But this issue with Black Lives Matter and all the concerns these players have is not have anything to do with me. It's not a matter of what I think. It's a matter of what they think and how do coaches deal with that. Coaches are in a very delicate position here, because you can't go out there and expect these guys to listen to you every day and respond to the coaching you give them if you give the impression that you're just kind of blowing off their concerns about a social issue like this. So it's not clear where this thing is headed. If they start doing what's being done in the NFL right now, for instance, where you start putting the names of somebody that was, maybe there's a guy that was shot, and some people are going to look and say, well, he did this, 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 and this before he got shot. And you're going to put his name on your jersey or a symbol or whatever, or his name on the field or something like that. They're opposed to that. Other fans would support that. Then you get this, Alyssa, and this is the part where it gets confusing. I'm going to give a personal example, because I grew up west of Lubbock, and most of my friends that I had when I was a kid have been Texas Tech fans for 60 plus years, going all the way back when they were kids. Some of them are boosters. A lot of them go to the games all the time, watch the games when they can't go to the games. And I follow a lot of those people on Facebook. Texas Tech's players walked out of practice about a week ago to protest, and they're furious now. And they're saying stuff like, hey, I'm not going to any more Tech games. I'm not giving them any more money. I'm done with them until they stop this stuff. Now, I'm talking to you about this earlier. How do I know these people? I've known them for 6 decades. I don't know if they're really serious about this. I don't know if they would actually take that extraordinary step of a team they've loved for 60 years, say, nope, not going to watch it on TV. I'll just go for a ride on Saturday afternoon. I don't know what kind of impact this is going to have. I do know that these political things have not been in the college game so far. It's been more of a pro sports thing. So if it starts, drifting down into college athletics, what's going to be the effect? And I just have no idea.
Yeah, hard question there. Simon the Squeal-a-lot wants to know, do you think Coach Briles will incorporate any semblance of the Wild Hog formation in his offensive package this season?
What Pittman has said is, and Briles has said this, is that, Traylon Burks is too talented to just be a one-dimensional athlete. You're a receiver. He's a receiver, all right, but we already know last year they used him to return kickoffs, and he's a punt returner. So he's being used that way. They're putting him in the slot. He was in the slot last year. That gives you the flexibility, if you want to make a running back out of him, have him carry the ball on a play. You quarterback can take a snap and just flip it over to him, and he takes off running with the ball. I think they probably will have him take a direct snap and see what he can do. And if it works, they do it some more. I think I remember them doing that a little bit last year, and I don't think it worked very well.
Well, yeah, it was all more about blocking and knowing the play than it was the execution. But I'm pretty sure that Traylon Burks can throw the ball too.
Yeah. What this is going to boil down to is, if you do it and it works, you're going to see more of it. If you do it and it doesn't work, then they probably go, we're not doing that anymore.
Sure. Old Hog asks, since players do not lose a year of eligibility this year, does it also mean that this year could not count as one of the 3 years they must be eligible for the pro draft?
No, it can count. Here's the thing, and the best example I can give you. Let's say you're a junior this fall, this season, and you have the option of coming back. You played, but you can come back and be a junior again next year. But if in the off season you say, no, I've done enough, I think my draft position is high enough, I'm going to declare for the draft, then you can do that. Or you can choose to come back. But no, this would not limit you if you can't. If just because you can have an extra year doesn't mean
you're taking it.
That you're taking it. It doesn't force you into any situation. You could still be gone after 3 years.
The Bionic Pig says in Georgia's second and final scrimmage, OC Todd Monken had Georgia's running back running his air raid attack. Reports say the offense regressed. Can you see any daylight of a possible upset? JT Daniels was about as mobile as Ryan Mallett even before the torn ACL, and as of today hasn't been cleared by doctors.
Okay, this is the other part of that. It's another similar type question, but this introduces this whole air raid thing into it. Like, I don't cover Georgia, so I don't know the specifics of that. Let me just tell you what I think's going on there. I think that Kirby Smart, his offensive coordinator, has convinced Kirby Smart, okay, we don't know what's going to happen with JT Daniels, and let's be prepared if we don't have him. And apparently they made the decision, let's try to run some air raid stuff to see if we have to go to this, maybe we'll do that. And apparently it didn't work at all, because I watched that press conference and Kirby Smart was highly critical of the offense, but he also said, we don't have a starting quarterback right now, and that's with Daniels practicing. So it's not necessarily clear that even if he is the starter, that everything's hunky-dory. It just sounds like they've got some issues at quarterback that are not resolved right now, and that gives Razorback fans at least a little bit of hope that Arkansas might have a chance in this game.
Yeah, we all know who created that air raid offense too, by the way. I don't know, this is Oklahog, says, I don't know that we can equate players opting out to indicate something about this team, but it leads to a question. What SEC teams seem more focused for the coming season, and what teams are struggling to focus on football? Pittman seems to have his team focused.
See, there's no way I can know that because I don't cover those other teams, but I do get the point of the question, which is it possible that some teams are going to be more affected by this whole thing, the whole total, everything you're going through as a result of the coronavirus? And I would say yes.
Yeah, I think LSU is a great example.
It is, and I think what's going to happen, Alyssa, is you're going to see some teams that have been very successful, and athletes are kind of privileged on successful teams. They're used to certain things happening during the season, and this comes along and changes everything and causes things to be messed up, and they're kind of going, what? We're going to have this crazy season where we don't have non-conference games and everything's a conference game, and we don't have the traditional, I think there will be a college playoff, but maybe there'll be less opportunities for SEC teams because you're playing conference games only, and how unfair is that? We got to play conference on. I think there are some players that are going to look at this, and even if they don't opt out, they're going to be going, man, all this stuff having to worry about not going out on campus and having fun, and I got to stay away from people. This is driving me bananas. And they would be affected by it, whereas you might have a team like Arkansas where all these guys are trying to do is bounce back from 2 really miserable years. They're trying to prove to everybody we're not that bad team you said we are, and we're going to surprise some people. And they wouldn't care about coronavirus and all the issues. It's just, hey, we're going to use this as an opportunity to surprise people. So yes, there's a possibility that some teams would be more motivated as a result of this, and some teams would be less. But as to which ones, I don't know.
Okay. Alabama Hawk says, Coach Pittman mentioned recently that the team isn't in mental shape. Based upon your knowledge of and conversations with the players, do you think they have the mental makeup to transition into a more physical team this year?
You know,
is that mental?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, what he was saying is mental, it can affect how physical you are.
Sure.
Again, it's a good example of what we were talking about earlier with Levi Draper. If the gears are turning in your head, you're not going to be very physical because you're not thinking about what you're doing. I can remember doing that as a high school player. We played a team one time, and this is stupid to even admit it, but my buddy, when we got the scouting report of this team that week, he goes, they had a picture of all the players that were starters, and he goes, look at this guy. He looks like your old man. And he looked like a 35-year-old dude. And I was looking at him going, that guy can't be playing. He goes, I'm telling you, he's the guy that's going to block you. I was a linebacker. And I'm going, no. So we get out on the field. They come out of the huddle. This guy looks me right in the face, and he looks like an old man. And I'm going, what? And I'm standing there looking at him, and he comes out and knocks me backwards about 3 somersaults because I'm not focused. I'm not disciplined. And that's just one thing that can happen to you on a field when you're not disciplined. And we know what happened to this team the last 2 years on defense. One bad play led to another bad play, which led to another bad play. Players are out there trying to think about stuff while they should be reacting. So that's what he's basically talking about. We're not in shape mentally, which is causing physical problems. But let me also say this. I suspect that he's exaggerating it a little bit to make it sound worse than it is, to make an impact on these guys. So if I were a fan, I wouldn't worry about it too much, because I don't get the impression that they're just out there tiptoeing through the tulips. But these are this coaching staff has different standards than the previous staff.
All right, we have one more question by yours truly. I have a question for you.
Okay.
We have had some college football being played so far. For example, Arkansas State has played Memphis. UCA has played 2 games. The ACC starts this Saturday. How much are you looking at these games, specifically the first Power 5 games to start, as we get closer to the SEC starting?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's one thing to watch some of these other teams, and I was watching games I normally wouldn't watch, for absolutely, because I wanted to watch them and then kind of reflect when it was over. Hey, is this going to do something to these guys? Remember how we talked about there are fans out there saying that when you actually played games, there were just going to be infections left and right, and that'd be the end of football. And we've seen that hasn't happened. We've now had 2 weekends of games. And there have been no reports of these teams suddenly being wiped out, and they suddenly, one guy said, they're going to start dropping like flies. Well, I haven't seen anybody dropping like flies. There have been some infections, but not as a result of games. So I'm pretty confident that the games themselves are not going to cause infections, and there's a reason for that. They get tested before the game. Anybody that's going to play, they know when they go on the field they don't have it. So it's pretty hard to spread a virus when you don't have it. So now what you can do when these Power 5 teams start is these are good teams. You know, these are the teams that are going to, you might end up being in the national championship playoffs. So I watch Clemson. I won't watch Florida State.
Why not?
I just don't want
They're
to.
playing Georgia Tech.
I don't care. That's for Georgia Tech.
Yeah, well, okay, that's who Clemson played in the ACC championship game last year.
I want to see Clemson, maybe some other teams, not Florida State.
You should. And next week, you know who they play the following week? Notre Dame.
Really?
You should watch.
Wow, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
I'm surprised Notre Dame's even playing. That's up north, and they're afraid of coronavirus up
No,
there.
clearly the Irish aren't. Luck of the Irish, they don't get corona.
Okay, but the bottom line is, I'm really anxious for some Power 5 football, and then we got 2 more weeks. Can you believe it's still 2 more weeks? That's 2 more weeks as of Saturday.
I was listening to something, because I guess Kansas starts, does the Big 12 start this week
They
too?
do.
Okay, so the Big 12 starts this week, and this one guy talking about Kansas was like, we're 10 days away, which feels like 10 months away from the, that's how I feel. We're 2 weeks, but man, it feels like we're like still 2 months away.
I'm not still going to believe it happens till it happens, because I've listened to this negative talk for so long that it's like a weight around my shoulders. It's pulling me down. And these people are going, oh yeah, you're going to get right to the last. It's going to be Friday of the game of the day before game day, and they're going to go, nope, season's over.
Oh.
So I don't think that's happening, but I'm just.
It's a big weekend for college football to see 2 Power 5 conferences start and see how they do. So
I'm excited.
I am too. That's going to do it for this edition of Ask Mike. For Mike Irwin, I'm Melissa Orange. We'll see you next Monday.